So I want to switch gears a bit. We heard yesterday a lot of papers about inequality, and I'm not going to talk about inequality, but more about some practical, probably, tools that might help. I'm stressing here might help because I don't have the final results, so I cannot tell you if it's true or not, but that might help to cope with the inequality of poverty. This is joint work with Yanai Shanan, who is a PhD student of mine, and it's part of an ongoing experiment we are doing together with the employment office in Israel. I have to thank also the National Insurance Institute with Bituach Leumi, who is helping us with the data and providing us part of the data for the analysis. So this is a paper. We are evaluating a labor market program, and just to give you a bit of background on the literature on that, there's a huge literature on active labor market programs, which try to give tools to increase working skills and employment among people who are unemployed or on welfare. They have become a standard feature in most OECD countries. Just to give you an idea of where we are, here is the percentage of GDP spent on LMPs, active labor market programs in each country. Here is Israel. We are a bit low in the distribution of spending on this, but I think this is growing, and there is more and more interest in trying to spend more money and hopefully invest more in this, trying to help people who are on welfare and on unemployment to get into the labor force. Despite the fact that there are lots of these programs implemented in different countries, we still know little on what works and for whom. Okay. What we do here? So we evaluate a labor market program implemented in Israel using experimental design. The program was targeted to people who are unemployed, not working at the moment, and who are on welfare, what is called in Israel הבטחת הכנסה. Each participant receives a personal treatment and group coaching. The main focus of the program was not a training program, was really focusing on enhancing non-cognitive skills of the participants. And we are looking at a wide range of outcomes, and also I will do some estimation of dynamic effect, whatever I can do at the moment. Now we are expanding the data, and I will be able to do more on this. Trying to look at the different channels that affect the program impact. And things that I'm not going to show you today is the program externalities, because this is part of the analysis we are going to do now. And as I said before, this is a long-term ongoing evaluation, so I'm going to show you the results now for the short term only. There's this huge literature on LMPs. I'm not going to cover it now because we don't have time, just to cite one of the recent reviews on the literature, the review of Crepona van der Velde, that they kind of make sense of the literature, what we know until now, and they finalize saying a few things that we are still missing, and they say, okay, we still know very little regarding the underlying mechanisms of these programs, what works for whom. We also need to know more serious cost-benefit analysis of this program, and also take serious the general equilibrium effects. And one of the things they say also is that traditional LMPs may be ill-designed for reintegrating most unemployed into society today. One may consider alternatives such as mentoring therapy and group treatment to boost self-esteem and other personality traits. And this is exactly what the program I'm going to talk today does. And overall, I think there is no evidence so far on programs that focus on enhancing non-cognitive skills and their potential effect on labor market success. And just to give you a bit of background on non-cognitive skills, I will define more clearly later what we measure here and what the program tried to do, because non-cognitive skills is a bit abstract in a sense. But there is a huge literature talking about the importance of non-cognitive skills for schooling and outcomes later in life. Recent research have shown that these skills are as important as schooling in determining earnings. There is some recent evidence on early school interventions that affected non-cognitive skills, but we still know very little whether there is any possibility to affect these skills later in life, especially among adults. So the only paper I found that there is a clear intervention trying to affect non-cognitive skills is a paper recently published at the AR that look at the criminals in Liberia and trying to see whether this psychological treatment reduced their criminal activity later on. So just to give you some institutional background for those who are not from here, this is the target population of the program. Those people who are on who receive income support, or what is called in the US, who are on welfare. There is in Israel about 100,000 households who receive income support, which is about 5% of the population. The allowance that they get each month, the amount of the allowance varies according to a lot of characteristics of the household, but specifically the number of children, etc. What they get, a couple with 2 children, more or less in 2013, was about 2,800 shekels, which is about 32% of the monthly income or 66% of the minimum wage. But we need to take into account that on top of this monthly allowance, by the fact of being on welfare, these households also get discounts in different in electricity, water. They get also discounts in childcare. They get childcare subsidies. So there is a larger package of a monetary package that they get. So how do we get this income support? The household, or each of the head of the household, the spouse, and they have to go to the National Insurance Institute to fill out some forms, and if they are considered eligible to work, that is, they are healthy, they are younger than the age of 60, and for mothers, those who have children who are older than 2, and there are also a lot of other small print details, but I'm not. Since there are some people from the National Insurance Institute, I'm not going to read the whole law, but just to tell you, this is more or less the main guidelines. They need to go and report weekly to the employment office. What do they do there? The treatment there at the employment office is minimal. They just go there. There is a machine. They have to put the fingerprint, and there is 2 options with this machine. They have to go every week, and they get either a piece of paper with a drawing of a house, which means, okay, you are free to go, you go home and you get your allowance. Or if they get a drawing of an office, you have to go to the officer at the employment office, who usually doesn't have much time, and he can give you a few referrals to jobs, but there is not much treatment, and the officer doesn't really talk to the person, and there is not much he does for the person who is looking for a job or who is unemployed. If you're not reporting to the employment office, so this weekly attendance is compulsory. If the person doesn't report, he or she can lose the benefits. Also, if he doesn't, he declines a job offer, but this happens very rare because the monitor is very, very weak in that sense. This program, so there was an idea there were a few programs trying to provide help to this population in the past. None of them were really evaluated by using a control, right, an RCT. And then in 2014, the people from the employment office came to me and told me that they have an idea of a new program, and that will be, first of all, a pilot, and then will be expanded, and they wanted to do a serious evaluation using an RCT. So I joined them, and me and my PhD student, and we started to do this big project. The program is called Employment Circles. It's a mandatory active labor market program, so people who are randomly assigned to the treatment group, they have to comply to the program. The main title of the program was they should integrate, the main target objective of this program was to integrate unemployed income support payments in the labor force, preventing long-term chronic unemployment. It started in February 2014. Until last year, there were already 20,000 participants only in the treatment group. Of course, we have a similar number in the control, more or less, or even a larger number. The results that I'm going to talk today are based on the first round, or whatever, when the time we cut the data and we started to analyze it, was about 5,000 participants. Who is the target group of the program? People who are receiving this income support, who are by the ages of 20 to 15, and they reported to 15 of the local employment offices that they were in the pilot. The population was divided into two, what is called the flow, who were new claimants, and what is called the stock, who were claimants that were already in the system for up to 2 years. Then now the program has expanded, and we have individuals with much longer welfare history. And also the program has gone to additional employment offices and other individuals. How the whole logistics work, so claimants are randomized weekly in each employment office into the treatment of the control groups. And this is really one of the first, yesterday Manuel Trachtenberg was talking a bit about this. Really, this is one of the first RCTs implemented by a government agency in Israel, and it's really a path-breaking step, I think, towards the use of RCTs and evidence-based policy making in Israel. This program now has been used as an example to show other offices and other places that things can be done, and actually I'm still collaborating with the employment office, doing a series of evaluations with different populations, and also the programs have different programs as well. Just to give you really very small snapshots of what the program, how the program looks like. Just talking about the flow, those who come for the first time to the employment office. In the first week, they just sign up to the employment office for the first time. They fill up a form, and their data goes to the headquarters, and there is a lottery. The lottery is being held like the computer, of course, but the idea is that in each of these employment offices, we are randomly assigned people to the treatment and the control group who reported in that specific week. In week number 2, when this person comes back, instead of getting the usual drawing of going home, the person who was randomly assigned to the treatment group gets a drawing of the office. He comes to the officer, and the officer tells him, "Congratulations, you're now being assigned to a special program, and from now on you are part of this program, and it's a mandatory program." The control group doesn't get any notice, and he continues with the usual treatment, reporting weekly to the employment office. So what happens from now on to the person who in the treatment group? He has to report weekly. Instead of having to report once a week, he has to come to the employment office 3 times a week. And what he does there is, first of all, he goes through a deep meeting with a psychologist who try to understand what are the problems of this person, what is his motivational level, what the levels of self-esteem, and which type of help he will need. And depending on that, he's allocated to one of the different workshops that are ready. I'm not going to give you the whole details about the content of the program, but the idea is that this is just how the program's designer look at the big picture of how things look like, but there are different workshops depending on the level of motivation of the person. Some people just need basic help on, looking for a job and things like that, and some people need more deeper help. First of all, trying to make them ready to look for a job. They're not there yet. they don't think they will ever work, so there are like motivational workshops and stuff like that they should go before going to the job search and usual workshops that job seekers go. So these are the main components of the program: the process-focused preparatory workshop and the motivational workshop. And the idea is to enhance, to prepare their skills, first of all, to make them feel ready, or make them increase their career aspirations to look for a job. The program lasts between 3 and 7 months. Every person can, if they find a job, of course, they can just leave the program. But the idea is there is a whole package of treatments that this person can go through. That could be around 7 months if he doesn't find a job until then. And an important thing to mention is the annual cost per participant, which was 1,400 shekels. The analysis is based on data from different sources. I'm combining here data from the Israel Employment Service. This is administrative data where we have all the demographics and the weekly attendance of these individuals, and also their job referrals, the refusals, etc., etc. We combine this with the data from the National Insurance Institute, where we have all their history on welfare and employment and earnings before they join the program, during the program and after the program. I'm following these individuals now, and we just now got the data on what happened to them after the program. So we just got the data built. So the results I'm going to show today are based on, we have all their welfare history and earnings before they join the program from the National Institute, from this administrative data, but the actual outcomes are coming now from this survey that was administered between February and June 2015. Now I will have data for the whole population in a few months from now, but this was based on a survey that we did for the participants. We wanted to have some results before getting access to the Social Security records, because it all comes with delay. The advantage of the survey is also that we can go a bit farther and deeper into the questions, and not only look at employment and earnings, but also about life satisfaction, and really measure these non-cognitive skills. Just to give you, I will skip a few things, just to give you, first of all, I'm not going to go deep into this table, just to give you a bit of background that actually the pilot employment offices are rather similar to the rest of the country. So when we're thinking of scaling up this experiment, we're trying to see whether the pilot offices were not selected at random, but they are not very different from the whole offices, the rest of the offices that serve this population. And the identification strategy is pretty simple here. We are having the outcome of job seeker I from employment office J, randomized at week T, who belongs to these two groups at the top of the flow, as a function of a treatment dummy, a vector of individual characteristics. We have gender, marital status, number of children, new migrants, age, health status, an indicator for ultra-Orthodox and Arabs. And we have a fixed effect for the randomization unit, which was the employment office, randomization week, and whether it was a stock of flow. Another thing, we have also in a model, another model with individual fixed effects, because a part of the outcomes we use welfare, the amount of welfare income from welfare that they get, and from that we have the data for the whole population after the program. So I can do another model with an individual fixed effects, compare their the difference in welfare income from welfare before and after the program. I'm not going to show you the results with the individual fixed effects, but they're very similar. And also I have a model with dynamics effects that we look at the program, the effects every month since the randomization. Just to give you a bit of background about the individuals who participated in the program. So we have the age is more the standards here. Here we have balancing tests just to make sure that the randomization worked and there were no manipulation for the who got into treatment at the end. We see that we have about 22% as single parents, 20% are immigrants, 37% have some health limitation. This is self-reported at the first time they reported to the employment office. These are not people who are on disability. They are just being asked about health limitations. We see there are 38% of Arabs. We have also ultra-Orthodox in the program, and we also have about 48% work at some point between 2010 to 2012, but in the year before randomization, of course, most of them were not working. 33% only work in 2013. Overall, we see that the randomization worked. The groups are pretty much balanced except for one characteristics. And if you look at all the statistics together, there is no prediction of being in the treatment and the control group. And I'm going to show you first of all results based on the administrative data, which is a bigger sample, but I don't have earnings and employment there. And then I'm going to show you the results based on survey data, which I think they are more interesting. So this is the effects of the program 7 months after. So it's a snapshot of what happened to individuals 7 months after randomization. So they all have what we see here is all the tables will be presented in the same way. Here we have the mean of the control group, and here we have the treatment effect. What we see is the program reduced. People are less likely to report weekly to the employment office, decline in 14 percentage points. They're also less likely to receive income support. And what is also interesting is that and it's important that there were no spillovers to other welfare payments. So it's not that they try to. One thing that was important to check is that they are not trying to, now that maybe they were trying to get out of this program and to get benefits through a different system, either moving to unemployment benefits or moving to disability. So, and trying to claim that they are disabled in order not to be in the program. This is not what we see. Overall, what we see is that there was a reduction in average monthly income support of 204 shekels. Overall, the total accumulated income support payments for the treatment groups are about 1,600 shekels. Remember that the cost was, the annual cost was 1,400. So already 7 months after the program initiation, we see that the program already pays itself. Now the big question is, where are these individuals? So we see in this picture that these individuals are not reporting to the employment office. They are getting less welfare payments, but there could be two different outcomes. One would be that they are really working, and another, there could be three different options. Let's put it this way. One could be they are working. The other could be that they were working before, but in the informal sector, and now that they are required to come 3 times a week to the employment office, they just disappeared. And the third option could be that this requirement of the program to come 3 times a week is too much for them, and they just go all the way down, and they even don't report for income support. So this is what's important now to see what's going on with employment. Just one thing on the dynamic effects that we can see here. This is what happens to the flow and the stock every month after randomization, and we see a first decline, a sharp decline at the beginning. That this, I think, we will attribute to the fact that these individuals, some of them, really decide, well, might be working in the informal sector and just stop coming and stop claiming their benefits. The further decline we see in the weekly report, then we will attribute it to the program effect. But of course, we are doing much more work now to get more into whether this is employment or not. Another thing is that we find no differences in benefit denial to job refusal, to the refusals of job offers. So it's not that the fact, when as I told you before, if the if the person, either in the treatment or in the control group, comes to the employment offices and the caseworker gives him a job referral and he doesn't take the job, he can have a benefit denial. We don't find an increase in benefit denial for the treatment group, which is something good, which means that the decline we see in income support doesn't come from a more close monitoring to this group. And also we don't see the opposite. We don't see an effect on number of job referrals. So it's not that the treatment group is getting more job referrals, or it could be the other way, that the control group is actually getting more referrals because the employment officer thinks that okay, the treatment group is getting something good, so I'm now going to focus my attention on the control group. So overall, we see that most of the results are coming from something that the program is doing. So now I'm switching to the survey results. The response rate to the survey was about 33%, which is more or less standard in this type of surveys. The drawback of this survey is that we were not able to do it really at a specific, like we couldn't really do it and follow individuals for a specific point in time. This is what I'm now doing on the other programs that I'm working with employment office. So this is a snapshot of the situation of the individuals who, after the program, like a year after the program started. So we have individuals with different duration in the program. The median was about 8.7 months. Of course, the survey doesn't pick individuals at random. There was some selection to the survey. We see that women married and some individuals are more likely to respond. However, we don't find any evidence for differential selection according to the treatment group, and in fact we are able to replicate all our basic results with administrative data using this survey sample, reweighting the population from the survey sample just to get to the whole population. So the first question and most important question is whether it's welfare to work really. And here we look at the traditional labor market outcomes, and we see that the treatment group is more likely to be in the labor force, either working or looking for a job. There is an increase of 8 percentage points in the probability of employment. All of the increase in employment comes from an increase in part-time jobs. Here is the effect on hours worked. Since these hours include 0 hours, so the number actually makes sense. I will show you in a minute, and also the effect on earnings. So the effect we see on earnings, although it's not significant because the sample is small, but I show you in a minute some other statistics on that. The increase we see in employment is an increase of 25%, and actually the hours effect that we see, 1.8, if we assume that all of this effect comes from those who joined the labor force because of the program, actually means that these people who started to work are working about 22 hours per week, so it's part-time jobs. And this is consistent with the literature that people who were not working usually and who are on welfare, when they start working, they start in part-time jobs and slowly they move into full-time job. This is a question, of course, and this is why we are going to follow these individuals over time. The increase in earnings also makes sense. If we translate the increase in earnings, although it was not significant, but marginal significant, the increase in earnings, if we translate it to hourly wage, this is really a bit above the minimum wage. And if we look at quantitative treatment effect, really to see where is this increase in earnings, we see that it's coming from here. And these are, of course, this is mechanically 0 because all these individuals are not working. And here we see the distribution, and we see that those who are at the lower part of the distribution of earnings are those who start working, and this is the increase in earnings. And now I switch to I think the most innovative part of the work relative to all these papers on LMPs, that I really try to understand what was the program doing, and we ask a series of questions regarding the tools of the program. And first of all, I just show you the questions that we are asking. And I show you here pure correlations between these questions and these indices, because this is already an aggregate measure that I'm showing you here, unusual employment outcomes. So these are skills that we think are important for the labor market, This is based on the control group, and I'll show you just that, for example, what is so-called job search efficacy score has a predictive power on employment and has a positive effect on earnings and weekly hours. For example, the job search efficacy score was based on a series of questions that we asked the job these unemployed individuals who are whether I'm confident with my abilities to search for a job, I'm confident in my ability to use the internet in order to find a job, etc., etc. Another question was based on worth self-efficacy score, which we are asked whether you feel that you can achieve goals that you will be assigned, whether you respect schedules and working deadlines, etc., etc., and whether you think that you can get to work on time. And then we have two other scores, that is self-efficacy score, which is a more general question, and a third question that is ADHD score, which was what we were told about caseworkers is that most of these people actually suffer from ADHD. The program was not meant to deal with ADHD. We're not giving treatment to these individuals on ADHD, but we also wanted to use it as a covariate at some point, so to look at the heterogeneous effect on that. So we also asked this question, and I will show you in a minute why we think at the end it helped us a lot. So here I show you the treatment effects on this so this is a comparison between the treatment and the comparison group in these specific questions. And again, we see that the treatment group is scoring much higher than the comparison group. So this is in standard deviation units. And so they feel more ready to look for a job. They feel ready also, or they feel that they are more likely to be on time on the job, etc., etc. When we ask about other questions that were the bottom part of the questionnaire, actually these two things were not part of the program tools. The ADHD, as I said before, we're not treating individuals on the ADHD, and actually we don't see difference there between the treatment and the comparison group. So we can think of this as looking at the treatment effect on outcomes that the program didn't meant to affect, and we find evidence that it's good. I think it's good because also it means that it's not that the survey respondents were trying to please the person who is calling them. They really answer very similar to the control group in these questions. So just to summarize what we find there, we see that an effect on non-cognitive skills, and actually we find that these non-cognitive skills are actually relevant for employment and earnings. And one last thing we did here is to look at well-being and expectations. We asked them about overall satisfaction with life, and also about job satisfaction. Here, I don't know how to interpret this. We don't find differences between the treatment and the control group. Actually, I interpret as a positive result. Since things about this that what can expect there is I don't know a priori, because there is a literature talking about how unemployment affects life satisfaction. On the other hand, these individuals are having less leisure. They have to report to the employment office, or they are working already. So overall, they are equally happy than those who are in the control group. On the other hand, also about job satisfaction, when I ask them about employment expectations, and I look at those who've been in the program for more than 8 months, and I ask them, what do you think? Do you think you'll have a job in the next year? Or how likely do you think you'll have a job in next year? We find a positive effect there. So at least they have more hope that they will work in the next year, and we find a positive effect among this group. I will talk just for how much there? 1 minute. So just in a second about the heterogeneous effect. All individuals seem to be affected by some extent, although we do find an effect on those who were less attached to the labor market. So those actually with a longer welfare history and welfare, we have found a stronger effect both in absolute terms and also in relative terms. And that was one of the reasons why the program was expanded to individuals with a longer history of welfare. We also find a stronger effect among those who were less education. So the strongest effect was among high school dropouts, and also in areas with higher unemployment rates. So overall, we see that the program increased employment and decreased welfare recipiency. The effect seems to be partly driven by an improvement in their non-cognitive skills. The impact was larger for the long-term unemployed, those with longer history on welfare, unskilled, and in areas with higher unemployment rates. We found that the program already pays itself in the first year of implementation. Of course, there is a lot of things that we are planning to do. First of all, now we are merging, as I said, with Social Security records to look at the whole picture and the dynamics and the longer effect. We have now already individuals with 2 years after they were randomly assigned to the program, and we will do more on this heterogeneous effect. Now we have a larger sample. We will be able to do additional outcomes such as job quality, job persistency, and looking at total household income. And we are trying to get more into the black books of these program effects. We'll do more on non-cognitive skills and externalities. Okay, that's more or less.
Yesterday there was quite a bit of talk about policy and the need for connecting between the research and policy, and here I think I'm not sure about the rest of the day, but certainly in comparison to yesterday, this is, fits in very well with the issue of here's a policy we want to examine, and in fact basically an evaluation study for a particular intervention, and it aims, as Analia said, to fill a lacuna in some sense that has to do with the fact that there is research about the relevance of non-cognitive skills for a variety of issues generally in life, whether it's education, satisfaction, even health, and so on, and other aspects. And at the same time, there's very little information about how this actually works when you're trying to get people into the labor force, and especially individuals with low skill on welfare and so on. So I think this study is extremely important and shifts sort of the emphasis in some respects from particular time work-related skills to more general types of characteristics. As Analia said, the study is still in progress. There was no paper and early results, so I suppose some of the things that I'm saying may or may not materialize later in the project. But I think it should be emphasized that its uniqueness in the fact that actually a government agency takes upon itself to actually implement a study that uses randomized control trials is important, and I think it benefits from this association between the researcher and the National Research Institute in this case. And one important aspect of this that it's carried out on a fairly large scale. So it means that you're getting data here and looking at questions that the results of which I think would be able to can be used to increase the intervention to larger segments, which is not always the case when you have these sort of trials on small samples and you wonder how what effect it will have once you increase into a larger population. I'm not going to show any of my own results. I don't actually study this issue. I would like to discuss some of the issues of the study, and I'd like to focus on one of the things that was said earlier or organized my discussion around the question, or the general question that was, which it was, what works, for whom, and why, which is sort of the general set of questions that the study hopefully will try to answer. Before addressing these three topics, I think it's important to note something about the findings, or to reiterate something. One important finding from the policy perspective, and probably the important finding, is that the intervention had a significant effect on reduction of welfare recipiency for particularly all groups defined by gender, ethnicity, religiosity, and education. Moreover, the intervention involves what I would consider very low expenditure per person, rendering the program cost-effective in a very short period. This, I assume, would be very pleasing for policymakers. Looking at the results more closely, one finds, if I'm not mistaken, that most of the participants found part-time employment. Looking at part-time versus full-time employment as an outcome, there is no significant difference between the treatment and control groups, although there is some difference in the number of hours worked. And in some respects, and again, we're too early in the process. It may change once these are followed, but I think it's one has to consider this, and it may be disturbing because it fits other findings and a more general concern regarding programs that incentivize low-skilled individuals to join the labor market. They are often forced into less than optimal employment relations. In this regard, it would be useful to know more clearly what employment they entered, and possibly from a survey, or maybe there will be better data in the future, whether this is voluntary or involuntary part-time work. Another concern, and one I would be interested in knowing, is the extent to which these employment relations are sort of the precarious type, employment in outsourced manpower firms who are notorious for taking advantage of the weakest workers. So one should be concerned that these people are actually entering the labor force, but in ways that are suboptimal. A related finding here is that, again, I'm trying to, I was figuring this from the tables, I hope I'm correct here. There is no significant difference from the data that we do have here between the treatment and control groups in the total income, that is work and welfare payments. So what seems to be happening here is that there's a shift in the source of income, but not much improvement in the economic well-being of the individuals. So I suppose that again, from a policy perspective, or for policy makers, this may be good enough in the sense that we're reducing the welfare expenditures and they're getting some income from labor market. This is very low income, we should recall. But of course, I suppose the objective should be that overall their well-being will improve through this process, and their overall income would increase if the policy is actually, if the intervention is actually successful. Turning now to the what works question, the treatment, as was said, includes several interventions. How does one separate out their effects? The researchers aim to do this by use of the survey and include some measures of non-cognitive skills, primarily self-efficacy in various ways, and the ADHD measure, which, as we were told, was really not, there was no real intervention with respect to that. I think there was a treatment effect. I think it focuses primarily, or the largest effect is the one having to do with work-related self-efficacy. I think that's important. But again, if we think about this into the future, it would be quite impossible to know about this, what's actually working from the administrative data. One would probably want to increase the surveys or use of a survey or some other similar instrument in the future to see that actually we're seeing change in these social psychological aspects that can be viewed as the factors that are actually working. I raise this issue because there are other studies that that examine directly changes in self-efficacy as a result of interventions, and they often don't show a change in this over time. So in order to know that it actually is working, I think we would have to try to evaluate change. One of the, I suppose optimally what you would want to do is have sort of a before-after survey of these non-cognitive skills to see how these actually working. The way it was set up, this came up later, and hopefully as this expands there might be an opportunity to actually do that, and I think that would make this a much stronger case for non-cognitive skills intervention. A second question is for whom? Now, and in one respect, I think the study shows that each of the groups defined by ethnicity and other characteristics, there was a difference between the intervention and non-intervention, so it seems to work across the board in some respects. However, I think one should be concerned that not all groups face a similar labor market. There is sort of a general view in such studies is that there's a labor market and there's individuals, and we treat these individuals and they go out to the labor market and use this treatment to enhance their abilities in the labor market. The barriers to employment vary for different population groups in Israel. Other countries as well, of course. To take a clear example, the barriers for employment for low-skilled Arab employees and women in particular are not only their deficiency in non-cognitive skills. They are strongly affected by the mismatch in spatial distribution of jobs relative to the location and location of residence. They face travel time and costs are very different for them. And prejudice and discrimination is another serious barrier. Another group that faces such barriers, ultra-Orthodox for other reasons. So I suppose what I'm saying here that it would be good if we can look, if it's possible to look at later interactions between these groups and the treatment. You may be affecting the self-efficacy, but the barriers they have are not internal but external, and that would require a different or additional interventions. Analia didn't mention it here, but in our discussion we had to mention there was supposed to be another component or a follow-up in terms of the workplace and to gauge more the workplace characteristics and interactions around them, and I think that would be an extremely helpful component if eventually this could be implemented. Lastly, the why question, so which is sort of what, for whom, for why, which is sort of how this actually works. I'm not sure again that this would could be determined if at the end we only have administrative data on the kind of job, their earnings, and possibly other extent of employment and so on. What we need here, I think, I suppose what I'm saying is we need more to consider if we want to understand the why better, we would have to focus additionally on the kind of survey you did in a more systematic way to actually understand those particular components of what you call non-cognitive skills and how they actually affect the employment environment, because what you saw there is that the important factor is the work self-efficacy, which is basically have to do with is interaction in the work environment. And what you want to see is what it does in terms of the work environment, and I think in one sense one has to gauge that through other means than the administrative data, and I think it's possible. I'd like to raise sort of at the end sort of a more general question, not specifically or not only related to this. When thinking about the persons behind the title of welfare recipients, I believe our overall interest is to understand the causes of their situation. The study presented here, and more generally RCT studies, have a great advantage with regard to causal power. But it should be realized that this type of study shifts the issue from the causes of an effect to the effect of the cause. Because rather than focusing on the individuals and what causes them to be unemployed or entering the labor market, it actually takes one cause and looks at that effect, which in this case is significant statistically, but it's hard to know whether it's overall has a very large social impact. So from policy perspective, you may say, fine, here we do this and we get some benefits very quickly, but in terms of their overall situation, I'm not too sure. Putting this sort of epistemological issue aside, my understanding of the study is that it seems to be successful, but I think we really should wait for the additional information that you're hoping to get in the future, because I think our question is, or should be, is this improving the well-being of these individuals? And the well-being in which income is fine and employment is another. Satisfaction, you didn't find any results here, but maybe in the future there will be. And I think that would make this sort of a very successful and important step to show that these sorts of interventions can actually make their lives better. Thank you.
I don't have really any suggestions for the study except to continue the discussion about measures of well-being. And I'm wondering if I could just sort of plant the bug in your mind about thinking of the effect on the family and possible intergenerational effects. So these personality traits could also change parenting behaviors and things inside the families. And so in the intergenerational literature, there is a segment of it that does deal with the impact of parental job loss, unemployment, use of unemployment insurance on the children. So to push that margin would be interesting.
Just a quick comment. I love randomized trials, and I think this is very exciting in terms of actually having an impact on policy. That's my first one. I hate the term non-cognitive skills. I think it's a cognitive bias in academics. They think that the only use of your brain is for academic thinking. I think these skills are incredibly, they use the brain, right? I just don't like, I know Heckman uses this term. I mean, we tend to use essential skills, but essential life skills. I just don't like that term.
I guess I never had a problem with that term. I mean, there are things that you're not measured by tests, and that's kind of what's meant by it. But you can think of them as life skills, I guess. The results you find are pretty similar to what's been found for job search assistants. And in that sense, I think it's quite plausible. And job search assistance also is not very expensive, so you might kind of benchmark it against the large literature on job search assistants. On the job satisfaction or life satisfaction, I wonder if you're looking for a little bit of a needle in a haystack, in that It's true that people who are employed report higher level of life satisfaction, but you probably didn't move employment that much. You can do some power calculations and say, suppose I take the difference in life satisfaction between those who are employed and those who are unemployed and think of that as a causal effect. How much would I be looking for, and do you have enough power to identify that? Then the last comment, maybe you presented it, but I didn't see it. But I'm interested in knowing how many people were continuing going 3 times a week after 3 months, 6 months, 7 months, because you talked about one possibility is this was too much of a hassle, so they just kind of gave up collecting benefits in exchange for the hassle. So that would be useful to report.
David, can you speak without? I can speak without. If I understand it for the I need it for what? Recording for posterity. If I understand correctly, the calculation of the extent to which the program pays for itself is based on the treatment effects, right? But that ignores the possibility that in getting employment, these guys are crowding out maybe the controls or maybe other people. Now that occurs even in the simplest demand and supply model, but I would imagine that's even more relevant in a world in which the skills that they get are in order to kind of be ranked higher in the hiring process. So I think it might be useful to tie that into your various skill measures and kind of do a mapping from those skill measures to thinking about how that would affect this crowding out possibility.
And also the cost of getting employed. You need to take into account the cost of getting employed.
First of all, I wanted to thank you for a very thorough and interesting presentation. And I just wanted to ask a quick question about the process. If you could say a few words about the system for ethical approval of such a trial, if the participants had to provide informed consent, and if there's thought given to the fact that maybe someone who is unemployed and is looking for income should be considered a weakened population, and if they have to have special consideration for their ability to provide informed consent, since they can't really choose their unemployment office, they're sort of a captured population.
So first of all, thanks for the great comment, and thanks Noah for your discussion. Just to address a few things. So first of all, one thing that I have a clear answer on the manpower, whether these people work in this, what is called in Israel, חברות כוח אדם. We actually asked this in the survey, and I didn't show the results, but these people are, we asked who is the main employer, whether it's just this second degree or is it direct, and we don't find any differences. So that was one of the things we were concerned about, and we don't find any difference on that. Of course, there's a lot more we want to do on job quality and job persistency that we're going to do in the next round. In terms of total income, I totally agree. And the only thing I can say now is that I hope, and again, I don't know, but this is the importance of the follow-up study, is to see whether these jobs, part-time jobs at the bottom of the wage distribution, closely to minimum wage, can lead to, it's a stepping stone, and it can lead to better job opportunities later on, or they will be stuck there. We don't know. Hopefully, and was part of the they didn't have enough budget, that the program didn't have or couldn't offer additional tools for job persistency or really to train some people on certain skills that they needed, although there were some, I didn't mention it, but there were some additional treatments, for example, among the Bedouin population, the Arab population in the south, there were some training on Hebrew, so then they did increase some also skills, cognitive skills on the population. Another question that was asked, of course, I also agree about getting more into that and asking more questions on skills. About prevention versus the cure, I think that what you raised is a very interesting point. This program tries to take care of these people who are already on welfare, and the question is why they get there in the first place. And of course, I cannot tell you the answer on that. I think what we saw yesterday was very interesting, and I think at the end of the day, we'll need both things. We'll need to understand why people get on welfare, but given that these individuals are on welfare, what we can do to help them. And in terms of additional intervention, actually, I want to self-promotion that we are actually working with. Of course, these individuals have multiple limitations. It's not only non-cognitive skills, and actually now we are implementing a different program in the periphery of the country that are providing travel subsidies for the population to look for jobs outside their locality of residence. So we are looking at the interaction between these programs, and we will do more. So of course, we're now working in a series of programs that give different tools and we will see how these different programs interact and help and work in isolation also. And the effects on the family, I totally agree. This is an agenda for the following years. What else? What you suggested, Alan, thanks. I think it's useful to do power calculations. And I showed the picture on the dynamics effect. Maybe you're missing it. I will show you later. But I showed that happened to them month to month. So we see an initial drop, consistent with other studies done in the US. We see an initial drop in reporting to the employment office that I think it comes to this requirement for the individuals to come 3 times a week to the employment office, but we see an additional drop in the treatment group in the month later on that we attribute it more to the effect of the workshops and the treatment itself.
But that was reporting for benefits, or is that the 3 times a week?
No, they're coming to the employment office. This is
3 times a week?
Yeah. Well, reporting to the employment office in a weekly basis, I'm not going through it, just saying whether this week I saw the treatment versus the comparison group. The comparison group has to come only once a week. So just comparing between them whether they are less likely to come to the employment office. I don't know if this is what you meant, but okay, so I'll ask you later. What you raised about externalities, this is something that we want to do, and David raised. One of the things we want to do is that there is no negative effect on the controls or something like that. We're going to take advantage of the fact that the program was implemented at different rates at different places. This was not random, but generated some variation that we can really check externalities. Still have to say that the extent or the proportion of the population was treated, even though it's a large-scale program, in each employment office was not so large at the beginning, by the results I have now. About the ethical issues, I don't have much to say. I think that there is no... there is this question of we want to test whether this program is effective or not. And the only way to do it is it can go both ways. You can ask why we are actually denying treatment to the control group, which if this program is so wonderful, why we are not giving treatment to the control group, or the other way, if this program is harming or we are actually requiring something else to do for the treatment group while we are doing this. And the question is, we are treating this population anyway. The population is reporting to the employment office anyway. Now there is a budget constraint. We want to try to see the effectiveness of programs that we have some prior information that might help. The employment office, and again, I'm not representing the employment office, maybe, but they have some prior information that this program might help these people who are on welfare. And they cannot offer to everyone. And the only way we can think of trying to see whether this program is helping is really randomly assign a group to the treatment group and a group to the control group. And if we learn that this program is helping everyone, the program, and this is what's happening now, the program will expand. And now the new entrants to the employment office are all treated. So my group is still in the control, but the new entrants are getting treatment. So I don't know, we can talk about the ethical issues later on, but I think this is for deeper discussion.